Hey guys, by way of introduction, let me just remind you that we are posting these series of short videos so that you might be able to think critically about the articles that we recently proposed that we as a church adopt and include in our statement of faith. One of them was the doctrine of Scripture. You can see a series of videos on that elsewhere. And now we're talking about our second proposal, and that was an article on the harmony of the law and the gospel. Consider this comment by Spurgeon. He says, "There is no point upon which men make greater mistakes than upon the relationship which exists between the law and the gospel." And Spurgeon is right. In fact, many of the errors and causes for unhealth in the church today can be traced back to this fundamental misunderstanding of the relationship between the law and the gospel. And so we see all kinds of errors from pragmatism that ultimately produces nominalism. All of that has been encouraged by theological errors coming into the church, such as antinomianism, that is the abandonment or anti-law, or Zionism on the other hand, or perhaps even theonomistic dominionism, that we exercise dominion all over the world by applying the Mosaic law to the civil realm. Now, I assume that all of these are by well-intentioned Christians, but these are errors that we need to guard against. They're prevalent in the church, and our statement of faith serves to kind of inoculate, if you will, to inoculate us against some of the various doctrinal diseases that can come in and produce unhealth in the life of the church. And so in light of these, we're proposing this statement of faith on the harmony of the law and the gospel. How are we to understand the law's relationship to the gospel? Machen says this, that a new and more powerful proclamation of the law is perhaps the more pressing need of the hour. He continues that men would have little difficulty with the gospel if they only had learned the lesson of the law. So it always is. A low view of the law always brings legalism. A high view of the law makes a man a seeker after grace. And I think that's a really poignant point, because you and I, and evangelicals at large, we tend to think the opposite way than what Machen just suggested. We tend to think that a high view of the law brings legalism, whereas a low view of the law emphasizes grace. But that is an error, and it's one that can be destructive to souls and can undermine the gospel of Jesus Christ. So we want to understand, how do we hold a high view of law without drifting into legalism, and yet at the same way having a high view of the gospel, yet never at the expense of the law in such a way that we have licentious freedom or antinomianism? How do we see these two coming together? That's the whole purpose of this article.